Hello, legends. Today, I catch up with Dom Legg. Dom is a communications and change management expert. He's the founder and CEO of Motion by Design, which is an animation studio that works with businesses, governments, and large multinational organizations to help them create animation videos, at first for the purpose of marketing. But now his business is predominantly in change management. So basically, he creates videos to help large companies with thousands of employees change what they're doing. Dom and I always have really interesting conversations because we are, in some ways, the same, and in other ways, polar opposites in our styles of business and views of things. And that always creates for really entertaining, insightful, and very interesting conversations. I absolutely love Dom. I think he's an incredible human being. He's built an amazing business in just 6 years. I'm sure you're going to love this episode. Dom Legg, everybody. I kind of felt like we had already started the episode. That would have been a good start, all our pre-conversation.
Well, they are recording, so...
Well, they were?
Oh, I think so.
Well, you would know, because this is your industry.
Well, I can see the red light, and that generally means that.
Don't need to be in the industry to know that. What are you doing in Sydney at the moment?
So I flew in on Monday for South by Southwest and, organising, attending that, organised lots of client meetings at the same time and just sort of making a week out of it, really, a working holiday.
Yeah, that's what's great about these kind of like technology and business Is it a festival?
Yeah. Music, tech, creative, film.
It's everything. So you can have a holiday, but you're also, it might be learning a bit, but you're mostly, it's probably best for networking.
It is good for networking. There's obviously a lot of students and stuff, so it's good for recruitment as well. But I just think, you learn a little bit, you become a better boss, you head back and have some fresh ideas and, you have to switch off occasionally, don't you?
Does it get wild? Do people drinking and having fun?
Yeah. The last few nights have been, midnight finishes and 8 a.m. starts. So
sometimes that is how networking works.
Oh, that's entirely how networking works. We both know that.
It's funny though, isn't it? Like, obviously that's not all networking and whatever, that's a small thing. But when you do have a drink with someone and you are relaxed and you're just kind of being silly, it's almost kind of like, okay, we've seen each other be silly. We've seen this stupid shit each other say. Let's be friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's what's good about organisations like Cub. It's that you're not there to sell. You're there to meet people, have a good time, and then relationships come with that more than going out trying to sell stuff,
Yeah, it's organic. Yeah. Although Cubs, we should probably mention, Cubs not a drunken group of business owners hanging out all the time.
No.
Fun fact, I think it's a fun fact, I haven't cross-checked it, but I'm going to guess, you may or may not know it, but you are our only member that lives in Adelaide.
Yeah, I am aware of that. Yes, people let me know all the time.
Really? Well, that means you're special.
And apparently when new members start, they mention that it was mentioned that there's someone from Adelaide who flies over, so it's worth you joining just being in Sydney. So
Really?
Yes, Calvin's used me as a selling tool.
As a case study.
Yes. Yeah.
No, the team Cub's known to do that, and you are. Because, what makes you do that? I don't like talking about Cub too much on the podcast, but just out of curiosity, what was the driver to join a club in another state and literally, be flying down regularly to attend your networking, your events and things like that?
A few reasons. I think we are pretty well known in Adelaide, so I figured why join a local networking group when we can join one in a different state? And I thought, you're probably going to get better ROI in somewhere that no one knows you. So at that point I thought, maybe Sydney's a really good place to look. And I think as a cultural difference, Sydney are happy to work with the rest of Australia. I think areas like Adelaide and Melbourne really want to work with locals if possible. So I seem to think that being a national company from Adelaide has huge benefits. And, coming to Sydney, I see it's a huge time investment and a money investment, but I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
And, Sydney, a lot of stuff happens in Sydney. Brisbane's obviously on the rise with the Olympics and everything up there. So I think that might be a really good spot to look for people looking outside of Sydney as well. But I think it's just good to try new things. And when you're in a different state and, you've gone away for work, you also kind of have a bit more motivation to get out there and do things. Like, you might book 6 or 7 meetings in a day as opposed to 2. And then you really push yourself to get those 6 or 7 because you're trying to make your time worthwhile. And it's kind of like that extra little, kick or motivational kick you need to succeed, I think.
Yeah, because you almost got to get your money's worth because the flights alone are expensive.
Absolutely.
But see, that's like an attitude that most people don't have. Most people aren't like, you know what, I want to expand my business. I feel almost like I'm outgrowing where I am. I'm literally going to dedicate or commit anyway to regular flights to another state to continually grow my network, meet other business owners, find new clients, do it. Like that's most business owners wouldn't do that. So the fact that you are doing it is like you're going to be successful. It's just you just are, and I can guess that because that's the mindset, and you back it up.
Yep. And I think there's some other benefits, like everyone knows me in Sydney as the guy from Adelaide now, right? And it's kind of like the weird and wacky thing that people remember, which I didn't realise would happen. But there's definitely some benefits of being the outlier, I think, in a state or an organisation.
Yeah, Adelaide's a weird place. I didn't know anyone from Adelaide until I married my wife from there. But I had never gone there.
You've never been there?
Never. I mean, no, now I have.
Yeah.
But before Alice, I honestly didn't even know where it was. So, like, it is really, I feel like I always rip on Adelaide.
How can you be a national company without knowing where Adelaide is?
Well, we're not in Adelaide yet.
Point taken.
Yeah, I do love Adelaide now, and he's got the best people. But anyway, so thanks for coming in and thanks for being here. Well, why don't you just share a bit more insight about your company, because you're animation experts, but you use animation not just for ads and things like that. You're actually working with like governments and multinational corporations to use video content, animation content to help them like do change management and like all these things amongst their thousands of employees. That's a pretty cool job.
Yeah, I feel like
You're like a puppet master of you.
I mean, I haven't been in business that long. It's been less than 6 years, and I've felt like we've organically found some different spots where we shine. Initially, when I started, we were doing marketing stuff. We were doing adverts, and we were really concentrating on, TV commercials, Facebook ads, and we still do some of that, but it's really not where our specialty lies, and it's not where we provide some of the biggest ROI for our clients. So I think the bigger we've got, the more we've been in the industry, we're seeing huge benefits to what we do in areas around change management. Large organizations who have 100,000 employees and they bring in some sort of new tool or process, whether it's two-factor authentication or maybe they're trying to improve safety in their organization. The CEO comes in with this amazing idea or a new tool and they're like, how do I get onboarding from 100,000 employees? And that we're seeing huge ROI with what we do. The communication strategy for internal organizations around culture, around change management, but also, external as well. So some of these things are sort of both internal and external comms.
It's kind of like PR, no?
It's kind of like...
Although not designed for media, designed for...
It's probably closer to something like HR. Like, it's kind of weird and wacky. And then we're obviously doing a lot of education for government. So, trying to solve healthcare problems in the country. So, the number 3 reason I think still is that people go into emergency is low back pain. So, we're producing a lot of educational content for government around things like low back pain, why your doctor hasn't given you a prescription for an X-ray, for instance, right? And there's a lot of evidence where if you go in for an X-ray, you actually come out more scared and probably worse off than when you went in for some conditions. So, you go in for low back pain, they're not going to give you an X-ray. So the government's really looking at educational pieces at the moment to help, I guess, burden the load on hospitals where possible.
Yeah, just stretch.
Totally. Yeah.
Go for a walk and stretch.
And I think we're really low on healthcare literacy, I think, across the country. So I think the government's really noticed that, and they're not probably investing enough in that space, but I can see a huge shift in that area.
But so you're communication experts. So you help large organizations deliver a message and create change amongst whoever you're aiming it at, whether it be their employees or whoever else. It could be customers. So what are the key what are the most important tips that you have when it comes to communicating core messages? How can you create a compelling message?
Yeah. So the answer and the simple answer will always be a mixed media approach. So ensuring that it's not just verbal, it's not just visual, you use a combination of styles, and I guess that appeals to their learning strategy. So some people are visual learners, some people, learn from hearing things, some people learn from back and forthing and asking questions. So you do need to provide a platform where people can learn in the style that they want to learn in. I think the most recent data, is like 60% of the world population are visual learners. So if you were going to only do one thing, you should do visual learning. And what that might mean is, you draw a picture when you explain something to a team member or an organisation, or you can obviously make a video, but maybe instead of doing an on-the-phone meeting with your team, maybe you get in front of a webcam or something and really try to, use some body language, use some illustrations, use some props, use anything around you in terms of, increasing the absorption of that information.
And what are your thoughts on that whole rule of 7, where someone has to hear something or see something 7 times before it becomes a thing? Is that a real thing?
So that terminology is in line with buying something. So it's about building a rapport or trust. So they do say, a customer needs to see your brand 7 times. There's also some, education out there around change management where, a common thread with organizations is, if you're trying to make change, it takes 8 weeks of constant reminders to make change across an organisation. And you'll notice that the really smart cookies in the organisation start to get it about after 6 weeks, and then 8 weeks is roughly where everyone sort of lands. So you need to really remind people of things over an 8-week period to ensure that change occurs.
That's a long time.
It's a huge
and how big of a change are you talking? Are you talking about like we're moving a meeting from 9 to 9:30 every week, or are you talking like we can no longer dress like this, we have to dress like that?
I think the type of change we're talking about is behavioural shifts. So, if you're creating a behavioural change in your organisation or for your customers, you really need to provide a longer term communication strategy rather than just, we've seen it once, we get it, we understand, let's move on.
What's an example of a behavioural change though? Are you saying like changing the culture, changing how we speak, or what's a behavioural change?
At an organisational level, it could be, hey guys, we've just introduced a new CRM. I need you to start logging things in here correctly like this. It could be what you mentioned about ensuring people rock up on time to meetings. I think some of these things you're just like, surely you'd understand and get that. But it does take time to really get a full shift of behavioural change across, especially larger organisations, because people all learn at different stages and speeds, and everyone has different priorities. So
yeah, but even smaller companies, like we were having a chat in our leadership chat this morning about Cub. We literally moved a meeting from 9 to 9:30 to accommodate for Brisbane because they don't have what's it called? Daylight savings.
Yeah.
So they've screwed us up, the Brisbane team. So we're like, we'll move it to 9:30 so they can attend the meeting at 8:30 and the rest be 9:30. And everyone's late. It's a disaster. The host doesn't show up. It sounds so simple, but it's about building habits. So it's really hard. And Cubs suffered from that many times. We might introduce a new CRM operation. So not a new CRM in general, but we're changing something.
Yeah.
Often we'll go in with, okay, guys, from now on, this is what we're doing. This is how you got to do it. Okay, sweet. Yeah, good. Bit of training. Yep, you got it. But see you later. And then you'll come back 2 months later and they just stop doing it. They're doing the old way again. It's
8 weeks.
8 weeks. That's actually a really important lesson. And we've failed that many times. I'm sure many businesses have.
I think a lot of businesses go, similar to these examples I'm talking about. They're like, we want to change something. Let's basically roll it out. And the communication strategy around rolling out whatever change that is kind of like a last minute thing. They're just like, we're in a rush, let's just make it happen. Here you go. And we've found that in an organizational level, normally some weird and wacky person has been tasked in rolling that out. Like it could be the head of IT who has to roll out a communication strategy, or it could be the comms manager, and all of a sudden their job is to ensure that they improve safety in their organization because they need to start using an app. Like it really is an afterthought. And I think with especially large organizations, you could see huge gains of improving communication, both internal and external at this level.
So it sounds like your business actually went through a bit of an evolution. Like you adapted. And I always say, wherever you start your business, it doesn't really matter as long as you start, because you never know what your business is actually going to become.
Totally.
And that was very much the case for Cub and very much the case for you. And so can you just talk a bit about how that transition happened? Was it difficult to change your product and service essentially, or change who you're selling it to? Was it scary, or what made you realize, I realize this is a lot of questions, but what made you realize, okay, it is the right decision to change? Because a lot of people don't like change.
That a lot of questions in that. My business has evolved and changed a lot over the last 6 years, and I think we've tried a lot of little things. We've tried some big things as well. So we launched a course earlier this year, for instance. I've always wanted to productize what we do, and really trying to find ways of providing, I guess, a more constant, more accessible product for people rather than everything being custom, for instance. And that change for me is probably the hardest change that we've made over the past 6 years. And we've just literally changed our business again in 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. So instead of selling, I guess, what we do as a service and everything requires a custom quote, I think that way is actually on the way out. So what I've realized is people need like a plug and play specialist service, and they probably want the risk-free association with that. So kind of like labor hire, but for the creative space, basically. So that's the direction that we sort of launched publicly 2 weeks ago. And that for me, making the change on that was huge. And
so what's that business model, and how does it differ from what was happening before?
So the business model is a more sustainable model. And I think sustainability for me is really my focus this year. So I think we've grown really quickly, on average 250% year on year for the last 5 years. And I think realistically, I've just spent my life catching up with what we can do better, how we can do it better, and really haven't had time to think about the business in terms of what we're doing really well and not doing well. And the tipping point for me was, I listened to a podcast and it said, if you can employ someone to do your job today for the same money you pay yourself, do it. And I immediately went, well, I can't expect that of someone if I employ them. They can't do my job, because we work with 150 plus clients every year. And I was like, I can't employ a salesperson to bring in 150 clients and expect them to have the same knowledge and communications like we're having today, right? And I was like, that's not scalable. It's not something that's sustainable. So finally, after like 6 years, it just went click, and I went, I actually need to change my job and what we do as a company to make it scalable and productable. So selling, 2 products, which is, we're selling time and we're selling, unlimited stuff, for instance, right? So we're basically now plug and play rather than, can we solve your problem? It's not a question of can we solve your problem. It's like, we would like to solve your problems more regularly. And once we make that relationship, then we can strengthen that relationship and provide better outcomes for them.
So is what you're saying that before, you couldn't replace yourself, because only yourself no one was able to customize or tailor the solution for a particular client better than you?
Correct, yeah.
So rather than expecting someone to do that, you productized your business in that you created packages where a salesperson go to someone and be like, this is our package.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's systemization. It's an improvement in operations, and it's a model for growth. That's how you scale, essentially.
Yeah.
Imagine if every Big Mac was different to tell you can't have that.
Totally.
They've got to be exactly the same, 3 pickles, couple squirts of this, that, whatever.
But what's interesting is I know these things, and I've learned these things over the years. And I think every new business owner is listening to all the same podcasts, and everyone's going productize. And I think for me, now that I've gone click in that one direction, I think the real tipping point for me was, I understand productization, but I was like, how the crap do I do that? And
in a service-based business,
totally,
that's creative like yours.
And for me, the one thing that I guess changed the whole way I think about that was, we're doing the wrong product in the first place. Like we need to change what we sell, and that took years to just think about. And what's interesting is, as I said, we launched 2.5 weeks ago. It seems to be going really well.
Give it 8 weeks.
Yeah, we've made a couple sales already, so it's already really good. And I've noticed like other agencies have reached out and said, this is freaking amazing, and they've now started doing the same thing. Like I met with a guy in Sydney yesterday who said, I've pretty much copied exactly what you did. So I think we're onto a winner, but like change, you never know if it's going to work out, and it's all a financial risk. So you need to have enough money in the account to go, can I make this risk, or can we do this risk? And and sort of, what's the return on investment on it.
Yeah, it's funny that, because there's only really two times where taking risks is worth it or is done. One is when you're such a strong business, you have enough cash and you're strong enough to take the risk. The fear of like the cost doesn't really matter. And the second is when you have zero money, you've got nothing to lose and you need to find something that works. The two polar opposite. When you're stuck in the middle, you're just kind of like stuck there. It's different. You mentioned people are copying you. Now, there's something happening with Cub at the moment all over the shop. Everyone's like, oh, we're going to start a business club. We're going to start a business community. What's your position as an entrepreneur that's being copied? How do you view the people copycatting you?
So we launched this course in January or February, and we didn't have a lot of client work. And my guys, my team, I said, guys, what do we want to do? Like, let's do an internal project. Let's create something. How do we productize? And our first attempt was to create a course. So we've created an online course that helps a freelancer become an agency owner. So I've built out all of the steps. We've given out all of our IP basically, right? So our processes, how we do it, our templates, our quoting, everything, right? I've literally put it into a course. And when you chat about that with people and they go, mate, you've just created a tool that enables someone to become a competitor of yours. And I went, well, that's fine. Like, I don't think it matters. Like, there's enough work for everyone. Everyone has their own niches. Everyone's got their own way of doing things. I think copying people is okay, and I think that you always need to put your own flavour on it. So, in advertising, there's no new idea. Everyone's just amalgamating other people's ideas, mixing it with their own, or mixing, a little bit over here, a little bit over here, and throwing it all together and creating their own version of it. And I think that's really what's happening now. And especially, with AI, that's exactly what AI does, right? It literally scours the whole internet and goes, I'll mix a little bit of you and a little bit of you, and then here's your idea. Nothing's going to be new. Nothing is new, really.
And so in that case, how do you stay ahead?
Oh, well, this is about the change stuff, right? You just keep trying new things. And I think, someone who's not trying to stay ahead is probably a business that is probably on the way out. I think the moment you stop trying new things and developing new ways and optimizing what you do for yourself and for your staff and for your clients, like, where's the progress going to be? Like, how do people progress in your organization? How do people progress as clients of yours? Like, if you're just doing the same thing, I just don't think you're just declining, I reckon.
Yeah. I've had two really good pieces of advice for like not copycats, but also competition. They're only copycats if you were first and they're copying. They're successful. We want more success. Let's do what they're doing. But I've had two pieces of advice. One was from my old man, which is one of my favorites, which is they can copy what you do, but not what you think. So basically not what you're about to do, which is, I love that one because you're always ahead of the losers behind you. And the second one was from John Simon, who basically said, forget them. Don't focus on them. Focus on yourself. Whatever you focus on works. So he's like, just focus on you. Forget them. They're nothing. So focus on you.
How do you feel about people copying you?
I love it. I feel special. I hate it if they didn't copy me. I feel insignificant. I love that. And if I felt that someone could do what I do better than me, I don't know. Well, I was going to say I wouldn't do it, but I don't think there is that person. And if they're better now, right, I'll be better. Like, cause I think I like that. I'd love to compete. And always, it's just been my character. I think it's a very business person character in general. But I'd rather be copied than not. I'd rather be copied. I'd definitely rather be the one copied than the one copying.
I always feel I'm the flip of that. I actually think that there's always someone better than you at doing what you do in certain areas. And I think in terms of employing staff, I'm an advocate for that. You always employ people who are better than you, and you trust them to do a really good job, and you empower them to do it. So I think, as you said, stay ahead, but part of that is making sure you got the right team and the right direction and just give it a red hot crack, right?
100%, and I agree. It's best to have staff better than you. For example, I could go through every one of our team. I couldn't do their job better than they do it. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. but none of them could do my job better than I could do it.
Challenge accepted.
No, it's a fact. Otherwise, they would.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, they would.
Would you let them?
Oh, of course. I mean, I view business as a vehicle for people, yourself and your team, to get to it's a vehicle to take people where they want to go.
Absolutely.
If it's not taking them to where they want to go, they're going to jump off the vehicle. So if they see continued growth and power and strength of the company, they're not going anywhere. They're staying because, wow, I'm getting where I want to go. And that means you need to be a good leader and understand where they want to go, why they want to go, what their situation is in their life. Are they getting married? Are they having a kid? People need more money at certain times and different flexibilities and things like that. So it's being aware of those things. But so with that vision, so as a vehicle of where you want to go, they don't leave. So basically, people constantly need to move up because they need growth. Because if they're not moving, then they're not going anywhere. Some people like to stay in the car. They don't want to change seats as long as the car's going forwards. They're happy. But other people want to move to the front.
Yeah.
And that means that you personally need to be pulling yourself up, because every time you pull yourself up from whatever you're currently focusing on, you are then able to focus on basically something more important than that. You have more time to focus on something more important, which means someone needs to focus on what you were focusing on prior.
Absolutely.
So they get pulled up. Yeah. And then the person under them has to focus on what they were focusing on. So they get pulled up. So business is a constant evolution. Like the team is an organism that's constantly evolving, and you are literally what's that thing in the middle of organisms? That little ball with the atoms are in it or whatever. It'll come to me.
A nucleus or something.
A nucleus. You are that. You're the center.
Yep.
And people come and go in business. Everyone's going to leave at some point, except for you.
Yep. You
know why? Because you are the business. And if someone could be you in your business, then they would be you in your business. Like that, you're irreplaceable. No one's doing Steve Jobs' job. No one. They can keep the company going, and they can keep making money, but no one's having the impact that he had.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then the argument is like, okay, but was someone better than Steve at doing that? And then you could say, well, maybe Bill was.
I saw Steve's son talking at South by Southwest yesterday or something. I didn't know it was his son. Someone sitting next to me went like, that's Steve Jobs' son, and he wrote it on his phone. And I was just like, oh, I can sort of see that now. Imagine living up to, I guess, that level of you've had that level of achievement in your family. Like, that would be hard. That would be so difficult.
Well, I got a lot of friends who have parents that are billionaires or just highly successful people. And like you learn a lot from things. Like after a few generations of like extreme success, ambition is less required. It becomes preservation. So it's like, don't break anything, because if you break it, you'll be the one that dropped the baton. So so it actually becomes quite scary.
Yeah.
But there are people, I know lots of people too, that if you have no reason, so you almost have no purpose, because I don't need to work. Anything I achieve is going to be insignificant. It's not changing anything. And if they lose that, they look to fulfill themselves in other ways, and sometimes those ways are bad. So I often feel for people that come from that have had a parent that was hyper successful, because it can either be the ultimate motivator, like I'm going to squish this dog there, I'm going to beat that person, like
I'm going to be better than my family.
Yeah. If he was able to do that with that, and I have this, then I should be 10 times bigger than it. So it can either be a big motivator. Yeah. Or if they get too big, it can feel like a pressure, like where you're getting squished. It's like, oh, I'm insignificant. Nothing I can do can actually impact this. Yeah. And I've seen all the different, I've seen the ones that got addicted to drugs. I've seen the ones that have sustained family businesses for another generation. I've seen the ones that have actually even grown it. And then there's very few, but there are some who start their own thing. And they start from scratch. They don't start from scratch financially. But they're building a business from scratch, and they're the rarest. because it's almost the stupidest thing to do. It's almost the most difficult path.
And I think you've probably also got that factor of, imagine your parents run a business, they come home stressed, they talk about the stresses of business. And like I've experienced that even with my employees. Like some of them want to do their own thing, they want to run their own company, and then them seeing the effort you have to go to, and the stresses and the life changes, they decide, you know what, that's not for me. And I think that, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not. Like probably not, right?
I think it's the opposite though. I think most people that have a business had parents that had a business. Most of them, or not all of them, but most of them, because business is the hardest path. It's definitely the best path, but it's the hardest path. And if you haven't had an example of someone who's done it before you, then it may not be a path that you personally see as a viable one. So I always have most admiration for the people who were the first generation business starters in their family, because they've got it the hardest. Not only do they even have to jump over the mental barrier of, okay, I'm going to start a business, and all their friends and family saying, don't do that. That's really dumb.
It's really risky. Yeah.
And so they have to go past that. But then in addition to that, they normally probably aren't around business people. So they don't have anyone to even tell them what to do. They literally have to fall over, make every single mistake.
Yeah.
That first generation business person, they are the ultimate savages. They are. I don't know if I could have done that. Like that's the hardest. That's when you're broke for decades while at the same time working like an animal.
Yeah.
And you haven't got the reward until it takes much longer to get it. After the generations after that, it's a lot quicker to the reward. Quicker. But that first, they're the special ones. One day when Australia becomes a republic and I can be president, because I don't want to be prime minister. Those are the people that I really like to fuel that.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship.
I love how passionate you are about that. You could really tell you were firing off. It was great.
Fuck, I just love business people.
Yeah.
I love them. I think that my old man said to me, everyone is equal. It doesn't matter what job you have or how much money, what position you've got. You need every single type of person for a society or a community. If you have no garbage men, you watch how shit the community gets real quick.
I saw something, or maybe it was a podcast a while ago. It was about a garbage company really struggling to find the perfect employee. And it really stuck with me because I used that approach for finding a new employer recently. And it was around like, if you reverse engineer the role, who's a perfect fit for the role? And this garbage truck company basically put a job advert out saying like, we're looking for someone who wants to lift weights all day, super active job, really good way to build muscle and stuff. And they attracted all these like bodybuilders basically to come and be the garbos, and they loved it because they're like, I get to work out all day, we get to go to the gym afterwards. And I think to some extent along the lines, having that right fit for the job in that space is amazing. But you just, as I said, you just reminded me instantly of that just by...
That's an example of great marketing. But to the point, like in reality, not one type of person is more important than any other.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have any one type of person in your society, the whole society really falls down. So we need everybody. But you have to have a favorite, Like I have a clear favorite, and mine are the business people. And I got a lot of reasons why I could say they're the favorite. And I could make arguments as to why they're the most important as well. But in reality, they're not the most important. In reality, if you don't have nurses, for example, well, you're screwed. You don't have doctors, you're screwed. You don't have the postman. No one knows what's going on anymore. If you don't, so you need every single person, and they could all argue that I'm the most important.
Yeah.
But none of them are.
I think the people driving change in each of those areas, like if you took that one step further, it's the people who are innovating in those
they're
spaces
the business people.
Are really the ones who are pushing the boundaries.
Right, so you're in my club. See, that's the business people. The ones make change. First of all, to make change, you need to have you almost need a reason for change. Now, that reason is either to improve something you're doing to make it easier and to make money. Right? Money's the ultimate reason. Like that's why capitalism...
Not for everyone, but yeah.
It's the ultimate... it's the number one thing that creates innovation and change on planet Earth is the gain. Right? So if you put, for example... there's evidence. Communism. Nothing ever fucking changes. Capitalism. Yep. Elon just caught a rocket out of space the other day. You know, that's not happening in communism, and the Cold War solved that argument too.
But he didn't start his company for money, did he? Though, right?
You don't have to start for money, right? You can start for a goal, but money's always going to drive it.
Well,
That's actually a very good point.
I wonder whether, though, because I think Elon is actually well known for not being money driven, right? So I wonder whether his employees are the ones innovating and driven by money, making it happen. I understand money's making
His
it all happen.
financiers,
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget he's raised billions and billions of dollars. So they need a return.
Yep.
If they weren't going to make a return, he wouldn't have got the billions of dollars to even do the project. So there's the answer there. But I do think that capitalism is the magic formula that creates innovation. And the people that drive capitalism are the business people.
Yeah.
But then again, if you don't have the non-business people, there's no capitalism.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so no one's actually, in reality, like what I said, in reality, no one's more important than the other. We need everyone.
You do, yes.
Yeah, if you neglect one particular group, it's actually worse for everybody, you know?
It was interesting seeing, like, even taking your idea one step further. It would be during COVID, you know, we had pretty much the whole world trying to find a solution for a vaccine, and, you know, it happened and they thought it was going to be impossible. So, you know, that, I guess your theory has been put to the test. If you put everyone to the same, if you point everyone in the same direction, you end up with a good outcome.
You do. Well, and capitalism also does have a downside, which is that people will do anything to make money as well. So I'm not talking about the vaccine or anything like that, but there are faults to the system, because eventually you get too much money, too much power, you can make decisions, or you can basically get governments to make decisions for certain things, and whether that be with anything, food or literally anything. Like capitalism also has a downside too, because if the world's ruled by money and not what's ruled by the best thing for the people, or ethics or morals, which often leave when money comes in place, or, you know, people, it's very easy for someone to convince themselves that they're doing the right thing when that thing that they're doing means their family is safe, secure, and financially stable, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And human beings are very, we're fickle creatures. We think we're really smart, but we're actually not. You know, we're little survival robots. Like our brains convince us that whatever we believe is going to help us survive better is correct, not what actually may be true or what may be correct. And that's the same for me, for you, is for everybody else. Everybody's a little survival robot. This is my opinion. We're getting real deep here. That's just my opinion. My opinion is often wrong.
I think it's got some merit to it for sure, and it comes back down to that change stuff, right? Like how do you drive or change that motivational factor? Like it's difficult. It's very deep rooted, isn't it? And I think you can, you know, that emotional pull is definitely a big one. And I think I saw someone say the other day, like fun, for instance, is the number one reason someone might change something to do it. Like whether it's purchase an item or buy a product of yours, like if it gives you some fun, chances are they're probably going to do it. Yeah. So maybe like, you know, maybe money does rule the roost, but I think there are some emotional drivers that possibly you can hook into that. Maybe, you know, once you reach that level of financial security, then what matters to you most?
100%. But I don't know what the study was, but basically once you have security of like housing, so once you've got like a safe place to live, water and food, additional things actually make you less happy. Like, so having too much actually is a decrease in your happiness. Once you have those things, like basically security.
Yeah.
It's security. And that's something I think business owners need to remember with team members and building teams, because building a team is about security and prosperity. You know, you want your country to be stronger and better so you can be stronger and better. You know, the Romans wanted more land and more things because then the Romans had more. And, you know, like you always want your team to do better. And if each person on your team thinks I'm better off being on this team than another team, they will stay on your team. The second they think that team's actually better, like I'd be better off on that team, they're going to make the switch.
It's when you make changes though, when you run a company and you go, hey, this week we're changing the direction entirely of what we do, how we do it. I can see how part of that is like, hey guys, we've got a new buy-in. Like are you all keen to jump on this bandwagon and change the direction of the bus? And not everyone's going to be keen all the time.
And it's how you sell it. If you make the sales pitch, guys, if we change the direction from this way to this way, it means this is going to happen for everybody. We're going to be far better off, way stronger. We're going to be able to deliver more to our customers, and the company's going to grow, which means there's more opportunity for you to move up and potential pay rises. All you have to do is start going left instead of right. That's all.
As you said before there, not everyone wants to move up and not everyone wants a pay rise. I think, you do want to get to that level of security, but, not everyone wants to manage people. And sometimes the only way up is to change role. And, if you love being on the tools and doing what you do, sometimes moving up isn't what you want. You want, maybe the money's good, maybe you want a little bit more money, but you don't want to move up. So at that point, getting change in those team members, maybe they're better off leaving.
No, you're completely right. And actually, it's just a difference in experience and perspective. So you've worked with very large organizations with thousands of hundreds of thousands of employees, some of them. And so you have every type of human being that you've encountered. Whereas I've only ever worked with SMEs or ever owned a medium-sized business. So I only know that perspective. I haven't had the smorgasbord of people experience that you've had in organizations. So, when I speak, when I build a team, for example, I'm building a team that I want at this point in time. And at this point in time, you need to build a team of psychopaths who want to grow and who want to do well. But when you get much larger, you don't want too many people to want to grow, because all of a sudden they're all going to be asking for pay rises and promotions. You almost want more people who are happy to stay, because it's like, okay, you'll stay there, you'll be there for many years, the company will be good, we'll look after you, and there's less movement, because we don't need movement at that point.
When we went through this recent rapid change in our organisation, and we're quite small, and I think some of the driving factors for me is I actually think a lot of industry in the creative space is probably on the way out. And I have some very polarized views on art versus, creative and ROI driven content and stuff. But I think, when I announced this new direction, and I think when you said before about what you would say to your team, and obviously you come from I think you're a really good salesperson, and I think you're really good at motivating and you have that language skill. I like to I normally take an approach where I'm probably a little bit more of an open book, and that may or not be a good thing. And I think that as an industry, I believe we actually need to move past we're artists, we make pretty images, because that's not important for people at the other end of the spectrum. So, whether it's you're creating something that is supposed to be used as a tool. So when I told, my team, hey guys, we're going to be doing this, the feedback was very mixed. It was like, well, are we going to end up doing lots of boring stuff? We don't really want to work for the same brands all the time. We want some creativity and some, lots of different things happening. And it's that whole story around what level of innovation, or I guess the bread and butter jobs, do you need to keep the progress happening and provide the best outcomes? And sometimes people don't align with that shift. They want the similar to you, they want to live on the edge, or they just want to go down that regular boring path and do a few things and go home and knock off for the night kind of thing.
I think it also depends a lot on the leader and what the leader wants, because people also are attracted to the style of leader that there is. And there's no one better style of leader. I've seen the most successful people of every style of not just leadership, but also of business. You could have a crook who's super successful. And you can also have the highest ethical person in the world who's super successful, to give two extremes. But there's many styles of leadership. So for example, what you just described, you really wanted to hear what their thoughts on a key decision was. Whereas another leadership style would have been to have discussion, to make the decision yourself. But once you've made the decision, then sell it as the only decision. And this is why it's the only decision. And this is why it's going to be good for you. And bypass the potential slowdown of, but what if this and what if that? And And look, I think both are very important. Like, you need a balance between the two. Like, you need to talk to people because you need to understand their perspective because it's not yours. Like, you need to know, like, what's it like, in your role? What would that mean?
What could go wrong with this decision? It's a really good one to ask.
And are you going to be happier or not happier? What would make you want to change it? Like, so doing the research is super important. The one thing I don't typically like, it's not that I don't like, it's that I don't do, is I don't love like the discussion that you mentioned in the sense to make the decision. I like the discussion in the sense for research. So like, okay, I want to hear all these different points and then I'm going to be able to make the decision that I think, and also I'll understand how to sell it to everyone now because you understand what their opinions are. But I do find that sometimes if you give people more to think about than they already have to think about, it's too much to think about. Then they're going to be focused on things that they shouldn't be thinking about. They should think about the thing that they're focusing on, because it's your job to focus on change, on leadership. That is your purpose for that company. It is not theirs. And if someone's not focused on every single task, that task won't be done optimally. So everyone needs a focus for something to be done, including you and me. So if I get them to focus at all on something that they shouldn't be focused on, like, for example, if you get a sales team to focus on something that's not sales, you watch your sales slow down. It's a guarantee. It will never not. If you drop everything, do not look at anything, it's like the horses in the races. They put the eye, what are these things?
The blinkers.
The blinkers, so that they can't look left and right. They're just going straight.
Yeah.
That's there for a reason.
But what if, so you're...
Not that I'm a horse.
Or your staff are horses,
No, they're smarter than me. I would be a horse in that situation.
Going to your line of thought there, though, the focus doesn't have to be the short-term focus. Like, what if you empowered your team to think about not making the sale, but where does the company need to be in the next year? And maybe aligning their values to the larger scope of this is who we are and this is what we do, rather than that short-term win. And I can see how, especially recently, like some employees really just latch onto that short-term goal, and they're really good at just pumping stuff out to get to that point. But I think if you can, as a culture, as an organization, empower people to reach that next level, which is the mission, the company statement and mission, and everyone aligns to that. So, back to your example of sales, maybe the short-term win is making enough sales, but what if the long-term win is, we want to, I think your goal, I think I've heard somewhere, is we want to be across Australia or the world, right?
We want to be the world's largest business networking organization.
So what if one of your employees in that sales role all of a sudden goes, sales isn't the way to do it. Like, I've got a really good idea and this is what I think we should do. So I think if you have that larger focus and you're able to convince them to think outside the box and not just do their job. And I think there's a level there. Like, maybe they do their job 80% of the time, and then that 20% they focus on anything they can to improve the company in terms of that mission and goal.
Yeah, totally. And in the way, if everyone's just too focused on what they do nothing else, you do definitely lose innovation, because a lot of your ideas come from your team. Like, hey, this is annoying. Can we somehow solve this? But I guess my point was more, have organic conversations with your team. So don't say, guys, I need to decide what to do. Can you help me decide? What is your thought? What do you think we should do? Because then all of a sudden you have 6 people there and they all think you should do different things. And then if you choose, whereas if you approach it with like, hey, how's it going? Is there anything we could do to actually improve what you're doing? Like, is there anything that's annoying having? What do you like? What do you not like? And you actually just show interest in the person and in their role. Yeah. Then the person's going to speak and give you real insight that you will never be able to have because you're not doing that role
without
anymore.
your ideas that have already convinced them otherwise.
Exactly. So absolutely. And it's bipartisan because you're not saying what you want, you're listening. And I think if you can have those conversations, you can even do them in group settings as long as it's more like at Cub we call them innovation meetings, or sometimes culture meetings, where we're just like the culture meetings are basically innovation to do with how we run the team. So like, what's happening that we don't like? Are you being micromanaged? Are you like, and we have open discussions. But innovation meetings are more like, how can we make your role better?
Yeah, we do that. How can you make your role redundant? How can you build yourself out of a job? What have you got this week you can bring in that is going to make your job easier?
I love that.
I think it's a huge thing, especially with AI and all this stuff coming in. if you're not embracing that and encouraging your team to make the job easier, like you're going to be left behind.
But the real benefit of that is if that person's able to basically become redundant in their role. The problem is that people will get scared if they don't have enough trust in you. But if they are able to become redundant in their role, so that role or that function of the business isn't relying on them anymore, they're able to move up.
Yeah, find some fun of something else to do.
Something more important.
Yeah.
You know, tying back to like how security is the most important thing. I just want to see how it goes with you and your decision making in your business. What made you start your business?
It was accidental. I think I've been coined as the accidental business owner a couple times. So I didn't ever want to start my own company. I'm not a risk taker, I don't think, at any point in my life. And I've since spoken to some people and they say, yeah, you're taking risks, but they're all very programmed, and I guess, you know, I've thought about all these risks to the nth degree, and they're all mitigated to some extent. But literally the way that we started was I left the job to go do something else, another job, and turns out that job was not that amazing. And my boss at the other place said, we can't find anyone to do your job. And I said, well, I'll help you out, and I'll do it on top of
contract work.
Yeah, I'll do it on top for now. Like, I'll do it for you. I've got time to do it. And then they convinced me. They're like, Dom, you need to do your own thing. You need to run a company. And they basically gave me my first contract. They sort of held my hand a little bit and said, just a heads up, you know, here's the legal requirement. You can only earn 80% of your income from us. You need to earn another 20% from other people. And going back to that whole, I'm not a risk taker, I immediately, in my mind, was like, well, currently this client is 100% of my income. How do I reduce the risk involved in running business with just one client? So, you know, I guess my mission at that point was to reduce that to below 10%. And I think they're at like 2 or 3% now, which is amazing. But like, that was the driving factor. It wasn't like I want to build an empire, I want to run a huge company. It was like, how do I build this and keep it sustainable? I feel like only this year I really stopped and went, oh, what have I done? Like, how have I done it?
Well, I think it's important that success is understood to be subjective. Like, I got a friend, Beth. She said to me, she's got an amazing business. She used to be a midwife. She said to me, success to me is being able to operate my business, earn as much or more as I was at my full-time job as a midwife, but have the flexibility and freedom to spend time with my new kids, because she was having babies at the time. You know, that is success. The business and success to you was what you just described. But do you think that perhaps what was enabled you to start the business is the security of knowing, okay, well, I can actually start the business. I've got this contract. They're going to be paying me. It's basically the same as you know, having a job. So it's the same level of risk or not risk. Plus, I can earn more because I'm a business, so I can get more clients.
The money wasn't a deciding factor. The security definitely was. So at that time, I'd already had a mortgage. My parents basically said, you need a mortgage before you do anything.
Why do you reckon? That's cool. I love that.
Well, you need 3 years at least worth of financials as a business owner to get a mortgage. So once you've got a mortgage, you can do whatever you want. Like, you know, go crazy. You know, I think realistically, once you've got that approval and got the mortgage, you know, you've got a few of those things, like you said before, a roof over your head, some water, and a bit of food. Like, you know, I think at that point you can afford to try some things and take some educated gambles, right? And I think that's how we probably got to where we are today. But I think, like, I don't think it was ever money, and it was about like, well, this client's currently, let's say, a day a week, maybe not even. And then it's just like, well, what am I doing with the rest of my life? Like I need to be driven. I need to do stuff. I need to find problems to solve. So it's that drive of, you know, that never ending. I always say it's the snake eating its own tail. The bigger you get, the more you have to do and the more work you have to produce. And then you just keep growing.
But what would you say is then the benefit? Why did you stay as a business owner as opposed to not? Like, what was the driver to be a business owner?
Accidental.
Well, you accidentally fell into it, but staying in it is a choice.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not easy, and I know you know that. So you still chose to stay there.
So the choice that I've made in the last few weeks is the business now needs to start, I guess, solving some of the requirements that I have, which is sustainability. You know, it's about being able to take a holiday, for instance, right, which is a big one in the business world. So I've made the decision my business needs to change to enable that, because I currently, you know, the business relies very heavily on me, and I feel like, that last piece of the puzzle is, can you walk away from your business for at least a little while and hit reset? And so that for me is where I'm at in terms of changing the business to do that. But I think realistically, up until now, we've just been full bore, and I haven't had time to think about anything else. Like we've just been doing it,
Yeah, action. It distracts you. And then all of a sudden, it's 6 years later, you've got a great business and you're like, wait a second, what's next? Next is making it independent of me. And that's an amazing step. You're the best. You're an amazing person. I always love talking to you, like when we're in our call group, because me and you always, we have really different, not attitudes, but systems, or like different styles maybe is the word.
Yeah.
But it's just always such a good collaboration.
Yeah.
It's there's always a beautiful middle blend. I really like it.
I think, when you think about things differently, and you're back and forth with other people who think about things differently, you end up with amazing results. Like you come up with cool things and you give things a go. Like that's what business is about, right?
In an episode I think it was last week's episode that came out, we were talking about how important it is. And it's something I've always felt I do well, but how important it is to actually look from someone else's perspective and be able to convince yourself of their perspective. Because if you're able to do that, you learn so much, and you can implement. There's always things you can implement into your perspective. Like you will change your mind, and I think minds being malleable is the most important thing. It's not about being set in like, okay, this is how I do it.
The hardest part though in that is how to engage your brain to think like your client, your customer, or your staff member. And there needs to be ways. I think, like, realistically, there are ways people can do that. It might be experiencing something new. It might be resorting back to your, like, a hypnotic type of state, whether it's listening to music, going back to that zone where you feel safe and secure and you can think about things in a different way. But the one we're most recently trying is, rather than think about stuff in that confirmation bias way where you're like, I've got a really good idea, we're going to do it. Try to think about it and flip it around and be like, how will this project fail? And, list what's the worst thing that could happen with this project. And I think that was a really good way for me immediately to go like, well, how do I think about this in someone else's terminology? And like, how do you flip the switch on your own brain? Because it is quite difficult.
It is. And but if you force it, you can. If you take the time, you can. It flicks back. That's all. So you got to be conscious. Okay, it's back now. I need to flick back again. Like I need to push it back to the other side. Anyway, thanks for today. And to our listeners, if you want to get in contact with Dom, you can go to cup.club/podcast and you can catch him there along with greatest lessons in business, favorite books, and other great recommendations. If you want to catch up with Cub on social, it's at Club United Business on Instagram. It's also awesome there. Thank you once again, brother. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Like and subscribe. Is that what you say at the end of these?
Well, why don't you? No, I actually don't. We should do that though. But you have a podcast, and it's a great one. Why don't you quickly share that before we wrap up?
Yeah, we have a podcast too. It's called Creative to Creative, and we interview leading creatives and agency owners about how they do their job, what makes them succeed, and what makes them tick at night, I guess. So
if you're a creative, go listen to that.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed the show.